So now we're going to look at the income and the substitution effects, which we laid out and defined, but haven't shown it yet, how it's actually observed. Or not observed, but actually how you can see the effect, how it's illustrated. And let's first start off by the income effect. So if you remember the income effect, it's the change in the amount of labor you have, or change in E for employment, divided by the change in income given your wage stays the same. And if you remember, we said that was less than 0. So let's assume that there is some non-labor form of income. So something you get not from working, it's just given to you, you have it no matter how much you make. So let's just say this is, you receive some sort of government assistance, and in this case we're going to say it's to the amount of $36. So what you're going to see is the budget constraint with that non-labor income. Now remember, the wage is the same, and so the slope of your budget constraint is going to be the same. So what happens is we go from budget constraint E, oops, let's bring that back here, take that off. So we go from point E, big D, it's going to completely shift up. Come on. It's going to completely shift up by that amount, by that $36. Because if you don't work at all, you're over here, you're going to have 16 hours of leisure and $36. And then every hour you work, you're still going to be making that $8 an hour, because that's what your wage is. And so if you work all 16 hours, you're going to have that $128 of labor income plus the 36, and so you're going to have $164. Okay. So this is this is showing, right, what happens to the budget constraint because of that. Now again, because you want to get to that furthest point out, that indifference curve that is furthest from the origin, if you were still on A, right? So if you stay at that same level of utility and you're using all your time, you would choose either this point here or this one here. But you can go further out. You can move further out. You can move up to point P. And so what do we see here? We see that because of this non-labor income that you got, you went from working 9 hours to 8. And so your labor time went down by 1. And this is showing the income effect. So the substitution effect is difficult to change, or difficult to observe on its own, because what's going to happen is if you get an increase in income, or sorry, if you get an increase in your wage, you're not going to be able to really hold your income constant. And the reason why is that, if you get an increase in wage and you work more, your income's going to go up because of that. So it's difficult to observe. But what's going to happen is there are two possible outcomes when it comes to when you get some sort of a raise. So when you get an increase in your pay, there's going to be an income effect because you're now making more money. All right, had you worked the same amount of hours, okay, so your income's going to go up. And there's going to be a substitution effect because you are, it's now costing you more to take leisure time. And so there's two possible ways it could happen. The first is that overall, okay, let's say your pay goes from $8 an hour to, looks like $12 an hour. Yeah, $8 an hour to $12 an hour. Okay. So now the substitution effect means that because you got that wage, you're going to work more. And so the substitution effect is saying that because it's more expensive to take leisure, your labor supply is going to go up. But the income effect says because you are now making more money, you may not have to work as much, and so you work less. In the case where the income effect is greater, the observed change, which is the income effect and the substitution effect, will show a decrease. Okay? So in this case here, the substitution effect, the income effect is dominating. So now let's look at the other case and show how we actually look at the measuring these. So let's first look at the observed change. So when you go from making $8 an hour to $12 an hour, you're going to move from point N1 to N2. Well, now let's look at the income effect from that. So we have our utility 1 and our utility 2. We go from utility 1 to utility 2. Okay. So the income effect says, in essence, the change in your labor resulting from a change in your income if your wage was the same. Well, this is pretty easy. So this is just showing you how you would get from utility 1 to utility 2. How much non-labor income would you need to get to that point? And so basically, the income effect holds your wage constant. And so what's going to happen is that you need to show what sort of an increase in income given your wage change is going to get you there. So all you do is you just shift this original budget constraint up till it touches at one point to where you would choose that level of utility. Okay, so that's your income effect. And then to get from your income, to find your substitution effect, all you have to do then, right? So again, remembering that your total effect, TE, is going to equal the income effect plus the substitution effect. Okay. So then if you know the income effect up here, right? So the total effect, we saw we went from N1 to N2. Okay. And so the total effect was plus 3 hours of labor from 8 hours to 11. So the total effect is plus 3. The income effect had your labor going from 8 to 7. So the income effect had you working 1 less hour plus the substitution effect. And so if you go through and solve for this, you can see that the substitution effect is going to equal 4. And so this is really a two-step process. All right, so you see the observed change. First, you want to figure out how much non-labor income you would need, all right, keeping your wage the same to keep you at that level of satisfaction, which you do by a shift. So N1 to N3 is the income effect. The substitution effect is going to be how much more you're going to work because it's more expensive to take leisure time now. So we go from where you got to from the income effect to what you observe, from N3 to N2, from 7 hours to 11 hours. And these are really just showing the two effects and how they work. Now, back out here. So which effect is stronger, the income or substitution? It's going to factor a lot on that, how much of a shift there is in the how much it pivots out basically. And let me close here. And let's make this. So basically, the more this pivots out, okay, the more the substitution effect, the more it's going to depend which effect is bigger. Because the more hours you work, all right, the more income effect you're going to have. Okay? And so, for example, if you're at point A currently, chances are the income effect is going to dominate because you're already working a lot of hours. So you may shift more towards have a higher income effect. So by that I mean if you're working 10 hours a day, all right, and your pay goes from 10 to 11, that pay increase is going to increase your income by $10. Whereas if you're down here and you're only working, let's say, 3 hours a day, going from $10 to $11 is only going to increase your daily pay by $3. So you're probably going to work more. So the bigger the rotation is here, within here, it's going to determine which effect is going to be bigger.